Once again, welcome to today's kickoff webinar, where we will be discussing Indicator 14, the post-school outcomes data collection for the spring and summer of 2024. The data that we are collecting this spring and summer will be reported in our State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report, or SPP APR, for federal fiscal year 23. So we will submit that to the Office of Special Education Programs at USED in this coming February. And so we will go over today's agenda and a few brief updates before turning it over to Patrick. So we'll begin by presenting a brief overview of what Indicator 14 is. We will then move into how to prepare for the online survey, how to administer the online survey, go over just a few reminders, and then we'll wrap up and we will begin a question and answer session. So please feel free to put some questions in the chat as we are going along, or when we get to that part of today's meeting. The slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on our Indicator 14 website in the weeks after today's presentation. It just takes a little while to get all the technical details down, but we will have that posted and we'll send out a reminder to you about when that is posted. You can go to the next slide, Patrick. So really quickly, I wanted to go over a few communication updates for this year's data collection period. Firstly, any of the communications that come directly from the department, so with myself, Martha, Kristen, you will be receiving those through MailChimp, and that is currently set to go to all the special education directors that are participating in Indicator 14 data collection. So just please make sure that you are aware of that. And if there is another individual within your district who is responsible for data collection, please feel free to move or forward that email along to them. Another change that we have implemented for this year is, instead of sending out all of the resources attached to an email, what we found is we get a lot of bounce back emails because of district IT policies that don't allow for attachments to be sent. So instead, what we have done is we have uploaded every single resource that you will need on our Indicator 14 webpage. You should have received an email last Monday and then today with links to those pages. On those pages, you will find our census letter that details the extent of the data collection. You will also find step-by-step instructions, sample phone scripts that you can use, printable versions of the survey and outreach letters, as well as translations of each of those into English. English is the principal one, Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Haitian Creole, and simplified Chinese. So those are all there. Again, if you are not the individual within the district that is responsible for this, you can pass that information along to those who are, so that they have access to all of the resources. The third thing is, in last Monday's email, we asked you to complete a survey that would detail for us who would be conducting Indicator 14 data collection for your district, and ask for an overview of what steps and actions you'd be taking to ensure that you collect this data and have a high response rate. So we would ask you just to reference that email that was sent last Monday and complete that survey before you do begin data collection. And our last communication update is the Exeter files, which have been uploaded into your Indicator 14 Dropbox on the security portal. We've instituted some naming conventions because last year with the transition to the cloud of our security portal, all of the files that were previously there got updated with the same exact date, and it was very hard to tell which file you should be using. So based on some feedback, we will begin naming all of the files that are uploaded to that Dropbox with the federal fiscal year that we are currently reporting for and collecting for. So when you log into the Indicator 14 Dropbox, you'll want to look for the file that says FFY23 Indicator 14 2022-2023 Exeters all district, and that means that all district is all of your district, not every single district across the Commonwealth. And then it's going to end with your district code. So that is the file that you should be using and referencing for the Exeters that you should be surveying for this data collection period. And we will talk a little bit more about that Dropbox and that file in just a couple slides. So again, some communication changes for this year, hopefully all in service of making it a little bit easier for everyone involved in data collection. If you do not have access to the Indicator 14 Dropbox, please contact your district directory administrator, and I will actually put a link into the chat so you can identify who is your district directory administrator so that you can get access to that Dropbox. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Patrick, and he will begin going through the overview.
As Greg said, we're going to begin with a general overview of Indicator 14. In Massachusetts, the focus in pre-K to age 22 education is to prepare students for success in their adult lives. The data that is gathered through Indicator 14 helps us to find out if our students did become successful. Using the Indicator 14 survey, you are following up with your former students who had IEPs 1 year after they left high school to find out if they have been engaged in employment and or further education or training. The responses to this survey and the summative information it collects provide us with an indication of the success of our educational efforts at both the state and local levels. Indicator 14 is one of the federal reporting requirements mandated by the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It is one of the 17 indicators of special education compliance and performance that the Massachusetts DESE reports to the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, in the Annual State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report, or SPPAPR. Specifically, Indicator 14 aligns with Massachusetts' focus on preparing all students for success after high school. The federal criteria for successfully attaining one of the 4 outcomes is more modest than most students and families set for their own first years out of high school. For instance, the federal criteria for outcome 1, enrolled in higher education, is completing 1 or more semesters in a 2 or 4 year college, and completing even 1 class in a single semester is sufficient to meet the criteria. So it is worth remembering that it is just an indicator. It doesn't give us the full picture of post-school outcomes, but it does provide a useful snapshot. The cohort model of indicator 14 data collection ended in 2022. So there have been some changes since then. Starting in the summer of 2023, DESE moved to a census model in which every district now takes part in indicator 14 data collection every year. This provides a closer alignment with indicators 1 and 2 and a more comprehensive picture of outcomes for students with disabilities across the entire state. Starting this summer, in 2024, the open-ended question at the end of the survey has also been removed. If you were involved in indicator 14 last year, you might remember that question. It is no longer present in the survey as of this year. Indicator 14 data is gathered using surveys. Prior to 2019, staff collected responses using paper surveys and submitted survey data using an Excel spreadsheet. Starting in 2019, instead, an online version of the survey was developed and used for data submission. The online survey simplifies the data collection process by automatically compiling and saving data so that you no longer need to submit your data using Excel spreadsheets. This year, staff will continue to use the online survey. It is available, as Greg mentioned earlier, in English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, Simplified Chinese, and Portuguese. To collect information from your former students with IEPs. The website address is provided in shortened form on the slide, bit.ly/workschoolsurvey2024. District staff may complete the online survey with former students, or the former student may complete the survey on their own. In situations where the web survey is not available, the paper surveys that Greg mentioned are on the resources website, can be used to record responses, which can then be entered online later. All district indicator 14 data is due September 20th, 2024. That means that all online surveys must be completed and submitted by that date, and any surveys that were completed on paper must be entered online and submitted by that date. Please ensure that all online surveys are completed and submitted on time so that we can meet federal reporting timelines and requirements. The next section is about what to do before you begin surveying, how to prepare for it. To get the Indicator 14 process started, we recommend that you identify your Indicator 14 survey team and plan how you will train and orient them to the Indicator 14 effort and timelines. If you're a very small district, the team may just be one person. It may even be you. Larger districts will necessarily involve more people to handle the increased Exeter number. As we will discuss later in the presentation, survey response rates are improved if Exeters are contacted by people they already know, such as teachers or guidance counselors. It is important that you review all the documents available on the Indicator 14 resources website, and please make sure to share those documents with district staff who will be working on data collection. So I have used the word Exeter a couple times now. And Exeter is defined under Indicator 14 as a student with an IEP who, during the 2022-23 school year, either graduated from high school or aged out with or without a certificate of attainment, or dropped out of high school. Um, in other words, didn't return even though they were expected to. Students who were in out-of-district placements are included in your Indicator 14 reporting. Um, so even if you are, for example, an elementary district, if one of your students with IEPs attended an approved special education high school, you would remain responsible for collecting and reporting Indicator 14 data for that student. For your convenience, to help your district identify who your exiters are, as Greg mentioned earlier, DESE has provided each district with an exiter list generated using the data that your district submitted to SIMS in 2023. Your district's list is available in the security portal. That is the file that Greg mentioned, starting with FFY23. Once logged in, you should browse to Dropbox Central, then to the Indicator 14 Dropbox, and download and save your district's exiter file securely on your local machine or network. Ultimately, the district is responsible for identifying which exiters meet the Indicator 14 data collection criteria and should be included in the Indicator 14 survey. So please take the time to verify that the list provided by DESE matches your internal lists of students who exited during the 2022-23 school year. If you see a mistake in the list that you download from SIMS, we will explain in the next slide how to report that mistake to DESE. But remember that you are responsible for verifying that the list is correct, and you can proceed with data collection as soon as you have made that verification. You don't need to wait for a confirmation from DESE or from PIR. The goal of Indicator 14 is, of course, to survey every individual who meets the data collection criteria and not to survey anyone who does not meet the Indicator 14 data collection criteria. For example, you should not survey any students who enrolled in another district after leaving yours, any students who did not have an IEP, or any students who exited in some other school year, so not during the 2022-23 school year. 2019 was the first time districts were provided with a list of Indicator 14 exiters by DESE. It was found to be a helpful change. And since then, every year, only a few exiters have been removed or added by districts statewide in any given collection year. To check the list, we suggest that you compare the list that you download from the security portal to the Indicator 14 student contact information sheets collected from your students when they were still in school. Verify that the list from DESE is correct and complete. If there is a discrepancy, then ascertain whether the SIMS list is correct or whether the internal list is correct, and why there are any differences. If there are discrepancies between the list of exiters that you get from SIMS and any internal district list, then that may indicate a data reporting error when the SIMS data was originally submitted to DESE. If changes need to be made to your list of exiters, you can create a simple Excel spreadsheet on which you list your district name and org code, as well as the SACID name and date of birth for each discrepant record, and indicate whether that record should be added to the official list or removed from the official list. Also, please include the reason for adding or removing that student from the list. That spreadsheet will then be uploaded to your Indicator 14 Dropbox on the DESE security portal. Patrick Serio at PIR, that's me, will make those changes to the master list, and then I will email you to confirm that those changes have been made. But again, as I said before, you do not need to wait for my confirmation to begin collecting data. You can proceed with data collection as soon as you have either verified your list is correct or determined what corrections need to be made to it. And as you see at the bottom, I do have DESE clearance to discuss individual Exeter information with school staff. The exact process for making this spreadsheet and uploading it is included in the step-by-step instructions that are on the Indicator 14 resources website. Once all of your 2022-23 Exeters have been identified and verified, you should use the student contact information forms that were completed by students in the spring of 2023 to compile all of their contact information. If you don't have student contact information forms for any of your Exeters, for example, for former students who dropped out before completing a form, or if forms were lost due to a change in personnel, or if forms were never completed due to a change in personnel or any other reason, then you can review your Exeter's emergency contact forms or other information in their cumulative records to find their contact information. As a reminder, having accurate contact information for your Exeters will save time for your interviewing team. The next section is about how to administer the survey. So we've already prepared for it. Now we are beginning with the survey itself. First step is always make a plan. Develop a plan with your interviewing team to contact your Exeters so that all surveys are completed and submitted online by the deadline. And a reminder there, the shortened form of the survey URL is included again, bit.ly work school survey 2024. It is important to discuss with your data collection team topics such as whether you will use emails, phone calls, snail mail, or social media to let former students and their family know that they are going to be contacted, whether you will publicize the survey, how often and at what times your interviewers will attempt to contact Exeters, and which district staff will reach out to which Exeters. As a reminder, this was mentioned earlier, we have found that your response rates will be higher if your Exeters are contacted by school staff whom they know and trust, such as was mentioned earlier, their teachers or guidance counselors. This is also a reminder, once surveys are submitted, staff at PIR need to match the completed surveys to an Exeter on the list from your district. And in the past, we have had difficulty doing so for some Exeters because not enough of the information field, the identifying information fields were filled in, or because there were typos or errors in those fields. So this is a reminder to your interviewing team. At the top of the first page of the web survey, please remind your staff to click I work for the district. Doing this adds a few items to the survey, requesting the name of the staff member submitting the survey and the SACID of the former student being surveyed. Including that information provides us with an additional way to match the survey to a student on the list. And if we are still not able to match the survey to a student, allows us to more easily follow up with your district and even specifically with the staff member who submitted that precise survey. So please remind your staff to enter their name, at the very least their last name, to include the Exeter's SACID, and to make sure that the correct district is selected from the drop-down list. So the precise method that you use to contact your Exeters is up to you. You choose which method to use. Based on our experience, we suggest that you mail and or email your Exeters shortly before you plan to start calling, and that when you do so, you include information about how Exeters can complete the survey online on their own, and then allow enough time for them to do so, to complete the survey online before your interviewers start making contacts. Remember to check emails from me to remove any Exeters who have completed the survey from your to contact list. I will notify you whenever we receive a survey that was completed by a student on their own. We also recommend sending a follow-up letter after a week or two to encourage completing the survey online. If more than a month has passed from the initial mailing, you can also consider sending additional reminders that your staff will be contacting households. Please make sure that you make at least 3 attempts to contact each of your Exeters. DESE strongly recommends making those attempts, those calls at different days of the week and different times of day. And we have found that districts with high response rates tend to attempt outreach more than 3 times to each Exeter. As I mentioned, I will send regular emails to the Indicator 14 district contact at your district. In most cases, that is the special education administrator, to let you know which Exeters have completed the survey from your district. If someone else should receive those updates, either other than or in addition to your district special education administrator, please email the correct or additional contact information to me, CCing Greg Toby. The updates can be sent to multiple people. I am happy to accommodate. And once again, this was mentioned earlier. My email address is pirmass14@potsdam.edu. So to allow districts to monitor their Indicator 14 progress, email updates from me will be sent to each district about every 2 weeks until early August, and then weekly thereafter. Those weekly updates will include the totals. I will also let you know individually when we receive new surveys from students. And districts can contact me at any time if they need additional information about who has completed surveys or for any other questions about completing the online survey. So the next section has a few reminders about important information. Most students with disabilities work at jobs or job sites that are much the same as those where their peers without disabilities work. We also know that only a small fraction of former students with disabilities are likely to work in non-competitive employment. Typically, students who needed low levels of support while in school are unlikely to be employed in non-competitive employment. Um, However, the minority of special education students who receive intensive levels of support while in school may be employed in non-competitive environments. Anyone who is conducting interviews with former students should be familiar with competitive employment and its characteristics. Although there are some school staff who are already familiar with this, not all are. We recommend that this information is reviewed during your interviewing team's orientation. Um, this topic is briefly covered in the technical assistance document sample script for telephone contact, directions for school staff conducting interviews, under question 8, which is on page 4. So this topic can be covered during the review of that technical assistance document. The critical characteristics of competitive employment are, as you see on screen, that youth have worked for pay at or above minimum wage, not less than the customary wage for their job, with the same level of benefits that the employer provides for the same or similar work performed by individuals who are not disabled in the competitive labor market on full-time or part-time basis, in a setting with others who are not disabled, which would also mean in an integrated setting. Uh, and it is worth noting that military employment is considered to meet all of these criteria. To have the most complete snapshot of your former student's engagement 1 year after high school, we you need to attempt to contact and interview all of your exiters. The greater the proportion interviewed is the the greater the proportion interviewed is compared to the totality of your list, the more complete and representative of all of your exiters the results will be. Every additional completed interview provides additional detail and insight. Um, So recognizing the importance of an increased response rate, it is a good idea to choose survey techniques which provide higher response rates whenever possible. As we've mentioned a few times already, most people are more comfortable talking with people with whom they're familiar. So choosing interviewers that former students know and trust is a good strategy. Another strategy is to have information on hand about local resources that former students might find helpful. Not only does this information help them in attaining their post-high school goals, providing that information can improve the reputation of the survey and motivate other exiters to stay on the line with you to complete the survey or even to reach out to you to complete the survey. This information may be in greater demand this year due to the ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. You can also consider publicizing the survey. This was mentioned somewhat earlier when we discussed making a plan with your interviewing team. The more often that your exiters hear about the survey, the more likely they are to respond when asked to complete it. Be sure to provide technical assistance for any exiters that require technology to complete the survey if needed. Be prepared to offer translation services and other support so that exiters are able to participate. And As I mentioned a couple times already, attempting to contact Exeters at different times of day and on different days of the week is recommended to achieve the greatest possible success. At least 3 attempts should be made to reach each of your Exeters, and as mentioned before, districts with the highest response rates we have found typically make more than 3 attempts to reach each of their Exeters. So last year, during this presentation, we shared information from some districts that had very high response rates 2 years ago. This slide provides some of the strategies that they talked about during their individual presentations. But we do encourage you to find strategies and systems that will work with your district, with your interviewing team, and with your Exeters. The last section just provides some contact information for technical assistance for you and your team completing the survey. So this is the wrap up of the PowerPoint about indicator 14. We discussed how to identify who to contact, how to access and use the online survey, and some reminders about important information. So thank you very much for joining us today. For any questions, you can contact me at pirmass14@potsdam.edu. My phone numbers are also on the screen there, 888-419-2697 or 315-267-2743. As was mentioned earlier, I do have clearance to discuss individual Exeter information with school staff. Should you need to know whether specific Exeters have responded. And for all other indicator 14 questions, please contact Greg Toby or Martha Daigle. And their email addresses are also on screen there. So thank you very much.